We've taken the first steps to begin again in love, calming our fears, quenching our tears, singing through sorrow and pain. Here we remain singing. And this song that we just sang has these words, voice still and small inside us all. Moments ago, we taught our children about the light of loving kindness that's inside of them and told them that they can, and I hope that they will, carry this with them through all the years of their lives and use it to calm their fears, to quench their tears. So we're letting them know that they have this love and this light within them, wherever they go, wherever they are, and that they can draw on it if they need it. In darkness and rain, it will remain. Now, in this season where it's darker and colder than most other seasons, we're focusing on going inward here at All Souls to discover and nurture our own inner strength and our own inner resources, making sure that we're in alignment with our own self, our own values, our own sense of purpose. Now, speaking of alignment, Rick Fortner shared with me that today, January 7th, 2018, is the day spoken about in the popular song from the 1960s about the age of Aquarius. Yes, you may remember it from the soundtrack from the musical Hair. It says, when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then peace will guide the planets and love will steer the stars. The song promises that harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding, no more falsehoods or derisions, and the mind's true liberation. It makes me want to let down my hair if I still had any hair. Well, according to astronomers and astrologers today and tonight, Jupiter is aligned with Mars and the moon is in the 7th house. So if that means something to you, and you can feel it, then I say today and tonight, let the sun shine in. It certainly would be a big change from how things feel right now in our world. I'm not necessarily feeling a lot of harmony and understanding making its way through our society. This idea of no more falsehoods and derision. That would be nice. It sounds great. I mean, right now, even though we've passed through the time of the winter solstice, it seems like things just keep getting darker and darker in many ways. Now, understandably, there is a profound desire right now for things to get better, for a light to shine in and help to dispel the darkness. Now, understand, underneath all of this is a deep human longing for a chance to begin again. Whether it's the beginning of a new year or the beginning of a new age. We often look for markers in time and in space that give us hope for the chance that we can begin again. I want to make a distinction, though, between beginning again and a new beginning. A new beginning has the connotation of a fresh start, a blank slate, as if everything that has come before is wiped clean. But when I speak of beginning again, I'm not presupposing a clean slate, but that we carry with us all of the parts of ourselves and the parts of our story into whatever comes next, including our mistakes and our struggles and every experience that has come before. So the question is, what do we do with the past as we step into the present and step into the future, knowing that our lives are hopefully ever evolving, always growing, and hopefully moving us towards the best vision and version of ourself that's possible? Now, the first thing is that we look to find ways to build on our past and maybe even redeem our past. You may be familiar with the great English novelist Charles Dickens, who was a Unitarian back in Britain in the early 19th century. Dickens began his life in a very comfortable family and house and setting, but when he was 12 years old, his father, who apparently was quite a spendthrift, was incarcerated in debtor's prison in London. Now, his mother and his sister joined him there in prison, as was the practice at the time. Young Charles was forced to pawn his wonderful book collection, to leave school and to go to work at a shoe blacking factory, which he described as a dirty, rat-infested place where he earned very little money pasting labels on pots of black shoe shine polish. He later wrote that he wondered how I could have been so easily cast away at such a young age. He eventually received 2 years of education at Wellington House Academy. He described his school this way: much of the haphazard, desultory teaching and poor discipline was punctuated by the headmaster's sadistic brutality and seedy ushers and the general run-down atmosphere. His school experience would eventually be reflected in his great novel, David Copperfield. And that's the point. Almost every one of the people and the situations that he encountered in his difficult upbringing and life became inspiration for characters and scenes and situations in his novels. His biographer, Michael Slater, said his early experiences with poverty created in Dickens a deep personal and social outrage which heavily influenced his work. Stories like Oliver Twist and The Tale of Two Cities and A Christmas Carol. Now, Dickens clearly had a unique gift, but his ability to take the experiences of his past and find ways to use those experiences to build a positive present and future is something that we all must do if we're striving to begin again in love. To take the things from our past and find ways to redeem them, find ways to bring them in and use them for something of meaning and worth and value. Now, one of the other things that allows us to begin again in love is self-awareness. The ability to examine our past and our present actions and decisions and our potential future in ways that help us make sure we're in alignment and that we're charting a course towards something that is meaningful for us. So Charles Dickens, of course, portrays this beautifully in his novel A Christmas Carol, which is still read and watched and even acted out 175 years after it's been published. How many people have read or seen A Christmas Carol? How many people this year? Just this year? Yeah. So 170 years later, many of us still watching that story, being inspired and influenced. Now, if you know the story, you know it involves a miserly man named Ebenezer Scrooge. What a great name. Who is visited by ghosts who allow him to see his life, kind of getting up on the balcony and look down upon his life to see what's been happening and where he is and where he's going. As he wakes up to his own life, he gains a greater perspective on it. It at times is very painful for him to see what he's been up to. Now, if you know the story, and it looks like most of us do. It begins with Scrooge refusing an invitation to his nephew's home for Christmas dinner and turning away two men who are seeking a donation from him, who's a fairly wealthy businessman, to help the poor who have no food and no heat during the cold of winter here at the holidays. Then he's visited by the spirit of Christmas past, who helps him look into his life story to recall times of his earlier innocence and his joyful childhood before he became greedy and cynical. It awakens in him parts of himself that he had either forgotten about or pushed away or allowed himself to become separated from. Then he's visited by the Christmas present. In this scene, his eyes are open to seeing the love of others around him that he's not letting himself experience. He's also confronted with sick and emaciated children and the real needs of people who don't have all that he has. People that he's ignored, people who he's been indifferent to for a long time. Now, then there's the ghost of Christmas yet to come, who shows him a scene involving the death of a very and deeply disliked man. Local businessmen will only go to the funeral if a free lunch is provided. Scrooge asks to see anyone who feels any emotion about the death of this man, and the only people that he can find to show are a poor couple who are indebted to the man, who are rejoicing that he is dead. Eventually, the ghost takes Scrooge to see the man's neglected grave, and on the tombstone, of course, bears the name Ebenezer Scrooge. He breaks down sobbing. His heart breaks open. He awakens to his life and its meaning and its impact and where it's going. He realizes that it's not too late, and he makes a commitment to himself to change his own ways and the things that he does. Now, Scrooge didn't start anew. He began again in love. Dickens used ghosts to dramatize this story, but the principle is the same. Living a loving life requires us to be self-aware and to be awake to the meaning and the impact of our lives. It requires us to go inward and make sure we're not leaving behind parts of ourselves that are important from our past. It requires us to make sure that we're not being indifferent to people around us in the present, and it requires us to really pay attention to what is the future that we're creating for ourselves with our actions today. So a man who has changed the course of his life and who has been making a really positive impact ever since is a man, you may have heard of him, he's been getting a lot of recognition recently, is Collie Sweeney. He grew up in Detroit. When he was just 6 years old, his parents gave him away. 6 weeks old. His parents gave him away to a woman in the neighborhood. As he tells it, that put a chip on my shoulder. There was abuse in my home. I literally had my teeth knocked out of my mouth. So I was always getting in trouble. I was always fighting. She raised me the best that she could, but I was always looking for a family. Sweeney ended up finding family in all the wrong places. People on the streets will become your family if you want, he said, but there's a cost. Eventually, Sweeney dropped out of high school. When he did, he had no job, he had no education, and he had nowhere to live. He says, I've been hungry, I've been living in abandoned houses. I've seen how the school system can just push you through. Never feeling like I had a family, Sweeney says, I had a lot of anger inside of me. It displayed itself at the most inopportune times. At school, it always seemed to be the time when it would flare up. I couldn't read or write. I saw all these guys in the neighborhood. These guys didn't have an education, and they were doing well. They had nice cars. They had nice things. So I turned to a life of crime. I started running the streets of Detroit. Everything that I didn't learn in school, I learned in the streets. I've been shot at multiple times, he says. Sweeney, however, was one of the lucky ones who was able to turn his life around before it was too late. He realized how different it would have been for him had someone kept track of him as a child, talked to him about his direction and his decisions, and just cared about him and paid attention to him. He wanted to help save other young people from the same path. Now, having fallen in love with boxing as a kid, he realized that it was a way that he could reach and help young children in his neighborhood. So he started by teaching a few kids in a nearby park boxing. And 10 years ago, he started the Downtown Boxing Gym Youth Program in Detroit. Education, he said, is the key. Our motto is books before boxing. And he always makes sure that the kids are studying or they can't be in the program. Sweeney poured everything that he owns into the program. He strives to give these children many of the things that they've always wanted. We treat everyone here like family, he said. We motivate each other. So far, 267 students have completed the program. All of them, he says, have graduated high school. 98% of them have gone on to college. To explain his motivation, he says, just imagine if you fell in a hole and it broke every bone in your body. And it took you 20 years to crawl out of the hole. And the minute you crawl out, you see young kids about to run right into the hole. Would you just move out of the way and let them fall in there? I couldn't do it. So I am going to do everything I can to stop people from falling in that hole. I'm going to cover it up. I'm going to block it. Whatever I've got to do. Sweeney's work reminds me of some of the work that some of you do and this congregation does in our schools with our 3 partner schools. In our partner in education program, the reading buddies and the lunch buddies and the mentors, those programs where we pay attention to these young kids, some of whom don't have a great situation at home or people paying attention to them. It's more than just teaching reading. It becomes an important relationship with these kids and for these kids. Also the soccer program that we helped to start in the schools, which is now spread to, I think, 19 different schools, which also has that philosophy. If you're going to play soccer, your grades need to be up. And it's help raise kids' attendance and raise their grades and their attention, even getting their parents involved because they want to come to the soccer game, so they're starting to meet the coaches and the teachers and starting to create some community. Collie Sweeney's story is an example of how we can build on our past, no matter what the past contains. Using everything that we've experienced, our mistakes, our pain, our fortune and misfortune, to build a life of meaning. As you enter this new year, maybe this new age, Rick, I invite you to spend some time in these colder and darker weeks and months to look inside, to make sure that you're not leaving parts of yourself behind, things that are really important to you that you may have lost touch with, to make sure that you're awake and aware of your present actions and decisions, and to consider what is yet to come on the course that you're currently on. And if necessary, to make a course correction with the full support of this community, so that your life will be one of care and will be in alignment with what you care about the most. Now, not everyone's a brilliant writer, not everybody's a boxer, but we can use whatever we've been through to create something of worth. You've heard me say many times that how having experienced tragic loss myself has allowed me to be there for people who I otherwise would not have been able to be there for. Like everyone else, I've had things happen in my life that I'd rather trade in for different experiences if I could, but seeing as that's not an option, I understand the wisdom in finding ways to build on our past, all of it, and to begin again in love. One of the things I've learned about how to begin again in love is that it's not about necessarily taking the right step or taking the perfect step, but it's about asking the question, what is the loving thing to do now? What is the most loving thing I can do next? So that we're taking a loving step, even if it's not the perfect step or the right step. No one wants on their tombstone for it to say, they were always right. Or God forbid, they were perfect. But who wouldn't want an inscription that said they were always loving? We've taken the first step already. We've made the effort to come here, to be around other people striving to live lives that are loving and positive. We've calmed our fears. We've quenched our tears, at least for a moment. And we've set ourselves up to begin again in love. Remember that even when it seems like things are getting darker and darker, that the light always returns. It always has, and there's no reason to believe it won't again. So even in these dark days, it's up to us to let the sun shine in. And if we do, the sun will shine in. Thank you.
You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.